What's up everyone? Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to teach you my 5 biggest tips I wish I knew when I started kayak fishing. So let's get into it. Tip number 1 is to tether down your equipment. Anything that you take on your kayak that is not tethered down, you need to assume that it's going overboard, because trust me, it will. And let me repeat that. Anything that you take on your kayak needs to be tethered down, or you need to be okay with losing it. Things like my cell phone or my catchboard. I can't afford to lose these while I'm out fishing. I'm not going to have a very good tournament if I can't measure and submit my catches. So I always make sure that anything that's going to be important to me on that day is tied down or has a leash to it or a float, so I don't end up losing an expensive piece of equipment. And a lot of times you don't want to be that guy that comes in at the end of the day and says, you're not gonna believe it, I dropped my cell phone in the water, or you turn around and a tree ripped a pole out of your holder. Don't be that guy. Tether your stuff down, because trust me, stuff will drop and go overboard if you don't. Tip number 2 is to pay attention to the wind. The wind can either be your friend in a kayak, or it can make your day absolutely miserable. If you look at the wind direction before you go fishing, and the spot you're going to launch has a nice 5 to 10 mile per hour breeze that's going to push you right down along the bank, great. If you see 10 to 15 mile an hour and you're in a wide open lake and there's no cover, you might want to reconsider where you're launching. Find an area of the lake that has some bays that you can tuck into, or fish the side of the lake that's going to be protected by the wind. Because if you don't, and I'll share some stories, my first tournament last year, my first tournament in the kayak ever, I practiced the spot on a calm day and was loaded, and I went back the next day with like a 10 to 15 mile per hour wind with some gusts. Thought nothing of it. I severely underestimated the influence that wind has on a shallow lake and a wide open lake where there's no hills and really no curves that are breaking up that breeze. By 9:30, I was taking whitecaps. By 11:30, I was probably taking close to 4-footers. I mean, I seriously tested the limits of what my kayak could handle on that day. And needless to say, I finally got to a spot where I could take some cover behind an island, and it was just not a productive spot, and the waves were so bad that I really had no choice but to hide there or go back in and be done for the day. One of the first upgrades you should make to your kayak is something like the Anchor Wizard, and this will really help you out with the wind. And the wind is also not just for inconvenience, but a bit of a safety factor too, especially if you have to paddle against the wind. I remember one time I had about an 8-mile float on a river and thought nothing of the wind because I'm floating downstream. That's great until you have 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts pushing you upstream. And had I not had a pedal drive kayak, you're seriously starting to talk about exhaustion and quite literally just running out of gas and being able to get to where you need to be. So always make sure, check the wind, and do not underestimate the influence of it. Tip number 3, and this is the best piece of advice that I can give, and that is to know your lake. That's obvious, right? But hear me out. When you get on YouTube and you're watching these guys that post, top 5 baits of April, or where do the fish go in the pre-spawn, those are great resources. Absolutely do your research and take what they're saying as a starting point. They're obviously, some of these YouTubers, they're great anglers. They know what they're talking about. However, when I say know your lake, the difference in where these guys are fishing and where you're fishing can differ drastically. And obviously it doesn't have to be as extreme as, they're fishing in Florida and I'm fishing here in Pennsylvania. Obviously there's going to be differences, and I have to take, what they're saying with a grain of salt. I don't just mean that. Even here in PA, where I fish in Western PA, we have got stained water, 20-foot max depth reservoirs, okay? An hour and a half to the east in Central PA, suddenly I'm fishing crystal clear mountain reservoirs that are 90 feet max depth. So even just within your own state, what's working on my side of the state an hour away, it could be totally different. So you need to use what they say as a starting point, but really be diligent in your fishing. If you take those 5 baits out and one of them's working, take note of that and then put the pieces together for what's going on in your lake. And I can give you another example. Right now it's April in Pennsylvania. Everyone else on YouTube is pre-spawn this and best April baits this and that. None of that is applying in PA right now. The water temps are still in the 40s. The only bait that's working right now is a jerk bait or a jig, maybe. And the patterns, as far as, yeah, it's pre-spawned by a technicality, but these fish are nowhere near what other people on YouTube and other areas of the country are doing right now. So my takeaway with that is to take what you see with a grain of salt and really be diligent and put the time in on your water. Don't just believe that what everyone else is doing is going to work for you, because you're going to get discouraged and you're going to get burnt out very quickly that way. Tip number 4 is use your kayak to your advantage, and that advantage is shallow water and stealth. I can tell you that there's been plenty of times in the summer where I find the shallowest piece of shade way back in a creek arm, and I'll pull some of the biggest fish I've ever caught out of 18 inches of water, and I swear they're laying sideways in there. And alternatively too, here in PA, a lot of our best fisheries like the Upper Allegheny River or out east in the Susquehanna River, you're not just going out there with any old John boat or bass boat. You're talking rocks and inches of water in a lot of areas, but it's some of the best fishing you can do. Alternatively with that, if I'm going to fish a lake that's already had 4 tournaments run through it, I'm not just going to go work the bank off the main lake because it's already been hammered. I'm going to use my kayak to get way back in those creek arms or get through some of that nasty cover that boats aren't going through and get the fish that have been less pressured. Tip number 5 is probably the most underrated tip that I can give you, but that is to hydrate, fuel, and protect your body. When you are fishing out of a kayak, it's a workout. You are exercising. When you're battling wind, pedaling in place, whatever it is, for 8 hours in the day, that is a serious workout. If you're not prepared going into that fishing, by the end of the day, you are going to feel like crap. And you throw on top of, not only are you working out, but you are baking in the sun all day sometimes in these tournaments, especially like in July. I mean, you're just cooking after 10 o'clock. And pair that with you wake up anywhere between 2:30, 4 in the morning to get to the lake. By the end of the day, you can feel like absolute crap if you didn't fuel and hydrate your body properly. And sunburn, protecting yourself from the sun is obvious. Sunscreen, sure, I'm a little superstitious with the smell, so I prefer to just wear SPF clothing. But there's been plenty of days where I've packed up after a tournament and I am driving home and suddenly I wake up and I'm at my exit to go home. And I don't mean that to be a joke. It's seriously, I've had to stop myself. That's what sparked me to fuel my body better before I go fishing for these long outings in my kayak. And even still, when I get home, I'm just dead the whole day and feel like crap, and it takes me well into the next day to feel 100%. So my advice when I say this is to, take care of your body, but a light breakfast, skip the gas station burrito and coffee. You will lose that battle. You will lose. Plenty of water, Gatorade, make sure you got some electrolytes packed in your cooler. Consciously think about throughout the day, like, all right, I've been 2 hours, I should probably have a snack, down a bottle of water. You will thank yourself for doing this by the end of the day. I promise you that. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video of my tips. Here in PA, I wanted to get out in the water, but we are just completely washed out right now. So if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing for more content. Until the next one, thanks for watching.